Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Brian Finley. And Brian is the son of a Marine Corps aviator and diplomat, and he saw 32 countries and all 50 states before the age of 19. He's currently living in California. He was a middle school and high school science teacher for over 30 years. And in January of 2023, he was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, which is cancer of the bile ducts, and given 3 to 6 months to live. And here we are 3 years later, and he's still going strong through a combination of traditional and non-traditional medical treatments that he's going to talk about today. So please help me welcome Brian Finley. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Melissa. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me today. I absolutely love your story and your perseverance. And, I always love to see when people buck the trend and live much longer than some doctor with, just, oh, well, this is the average kind of thing says that you have for a prognosis. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Every day is a blessing. And it's great for me to have this attitude of gratitude because it's been quite a journey. And I was telling my wife just a few weeks ago, back then the thought of making it to 2026, it didn't seem like that was going to be in my future, in my cards. And here we are. So yeah, I'm truly grateful.
It's truly amazing that, and I don't know if other people with chronic disease or anything kind of feel this way, but, when you're diagnosed with cancer, especially a stage 4 or a terminal cancer, it is amazing how every day becomes a blessing. And I just feel like, everybody that I've interviewed and have talked to with cancer really feels that way. And I don't know if it's that way for other people, but I feel like that's one of the true silver linings of cancer is I've just become more appreciative and grateful for the blessing of every day that we have on this earth.
Absolutely. It's odd. I had a number of life events happen before my diagnosis that were kind of slaps in the face of life, and they sort of mentally prepared me for the diagnosis, and I think that was part of my healing. Is that pretty early on, I never really went into mentally dark places. I didn't really get, what you might deem depressed over my diagnosis, and I just was pretty accepting of it, and just it's not that I didn't have a vigor to fight it. I just was, focused my attention on learning as much as I could about this disease, because cholangiocarcinoma is a mouthful just to learn how to pronounce. But I was grateful that my science background came into play and was helpful early on, because all the clinical studies that I read about and all the papers about cholangio were very helpful and allowed me to just focus my attention on that. And so that I can have more meaningful discussions with my medical team about how to really tackle this from the beginning. And so I very early on, I was in a decent mental place. I didn't dwell on really negative things, and I just was fairly accepting of it. And even now, I'm able to look back at all of those life events, and I'm able to see them as blessings. I even my cancer, I think it's very strange, and I feel a little bit weird saying that, especially to people that are truly struggling in life, especially with cancer or terminal diagnosis. But I'm able to look and fairly early on, and after the diagnosis, look at cancer as a blessing in my life. It really allowed me to learn so much about myself and others that was really positive. I truly am grateful for it all. And it's just icing on the cake every day that I live now.
I truly believe that your attitude and your, positivity goes such a long way in, getting through treatments and dealing with all of the side effects and anything that comes up that, and I'm not here to preach and say, oh, everybody needs to be positive, because as I say in almost every episode, cancer sucks. Like there's no two ways about it. Going through it sucks. And you can still have this positive attitude of, gratitude and being appreciative of everything that comes into your life, either because of it or in spite of it or whatever, they're not mutually exclusive. You can have both.
Right. I mean, none of us are going to cheat death. We're all going to go out in a box. And, good and bad things happen to us in life. And I think, I've lived enough years to know that really the thing that matters is when those good and bad things happen to you, that you just learn as much as you can from them. I think we're here in Earth School for a limited amount of time. So whether we live to 21 or 102, it's in the scheme of universal time. It's just a snap of the finger. So while we're here, learn as much as we can from the good and bad that happens to us here in life school. And that's really what matters is the way we react to those good and bad things. And so I guess there are times where, it's kind of like that old saying, fake it till you make it. I really didn't have to fake it too much. I really was in a pretty good mental place because of those life events that happened to me before. But yeah, attitude is so important. And the way that you approach your cancer or other bad things in life in general, just, try not to go to dark places, and just see what you can learn from it and try to show grit and perseverance and resilience and get through it.
Or, I think most of us do go to dark places, especially when you get that initial diagnosis. Like I think probably just about everybody remembers exactly where they were, exactly what they were doing when they were told those 3 words. And, I like to say it's okay to go to dark places. You just don't want to live there because it's not realistic to say, oh my goodness, I have cancer. Like this is great. And it's all going to be great. Like we do go there. It's just a matter of having bad moments versus having a bad life.
Yeah, you put it really well. And I'm certainly not one to judge anybody. And we're all human and we all react to things differently. And I certainly never went, to really beautiful places and it was like celebrating my diagnosis for sure.
Yeah.
If anything, I just went on a mission to dive deeply into the nature of my illness and how to best fight it. And then also I was a little bit in panic mode in that I just I felt like I had unfinished business and I needed to get my affairs in order, especially with just a few months, as far as my prognosis. Given a few months, I felt like, oh my gosh, I need to get that living trust in order and my finances in order, and just put all my passwords and all of our accounts in a nice organized place for my wife, because I do a lot of the bill paying and whatnot, and just to make it easier on her. And and even so far as asking my family what do they want to do as far as burial issues, and I was of the mindset, just cremate me and put me in a cardboard box and just spread my ashes, just do it on the cheap. But my son said, no, I want a place to actually go visit you, Dad. So I had to go down a path of going to the cemetery and paying for what ended up being a cemetery bench that they'll put my ashes in, just so my son can have a place to go visit me. And so it's not about me, it's about the people that I left behind. So that was kind of a little bit of a panic mode reaction that I had to just hurry up and get affairs in order before my health dwindled to where I wouldn't be able to do much. So yeah.
And now you can look at it as it's done. And so, when you eventually get to that path, which is hopefully a long way down the road, you don't even have to think about it because it's already done.
Yep. All paid for it. The bench is built. It's just waiting for
your ashes. Yep. Hopefully waiting for a long time.
We'll see. Yep. What's meant to be will be, but hopefully. Yeah.
All right. So Brian, take us back. I want to kind of go back to when you were diagnosed. Like what was going on in your life? Where were you in your life, and how did the diagnosis come about?
So I felt like I've had a pretty fortunate life. I mean, just been pretty blessed. My childhood was wonderful, being the son of, as you said earlier, a military brat. He was a pilot and then a diplomat for years, and got to travel the world. And I loved going to new places. I never dreaded moving. I mean, I think I didn't really know any better as a kid, and I think that was good because it helped make me, I think, more adaptable than if we had just stayed in the same place for, like my kids, for decades, and so I feel blessed in that childhood, and my 20s, and getting married and having two beautiful boys. I loved my career as a teacher, as a science teacher. I loved science. I loved teaching kids, and so life was really great, um, until probably, my son. My oldest son, Cody, was doing really well in life. He was, always top of his class. He was a great, student athlete. He was a star athlete on a lot of his sports teams. And in high school, he played football, and I think his team went undefeated or close to that freshman year. And he had a lot of great friends, but they went down a path of partying, and it started just with alcohol, and then it led to a lot of pot use. And then within a few years, he a few of the kids, including my son, had graduated to heroin. So that was the beginning of a little bit of kind of a stressful period in my life that lasted a few years, and he was in and out of rehab. But in 2018, in September of 2018, he unfortunately relapsed after nine months of sobriety, and he was getting ready to go to college and prep for engineering, but he had an overdose and unfortunately passed away, and that was a real shock, and that kind of started a period of time, for a few years, where it was pretty stressful in a lot of different areas of life, just not just losing Cody, but in other areas as well. But I was really blessed in that. I don't know how to put it, but for some very strange signs, synchronicities, beautiful things happened in my life that first year after he passed away. They kind of, it convinced me that he was okay and he was in a good place, and I was able to get those signs. So that was something that was positive. But then I had some stressful events happen at work, and I ended up, after he passed away, being called to go teach at a school, an alternative school in our district, which is, it's a large district, San Diego Unified School District, but it's a school where they send all the students in our district and middle school and high school who have been expelled from their schools. So I felt called to really go work with and help those kids. And it was a beautiful place. It was not an easy job, but I was in a place in my life where I felt like I could really work with and maybe make a difference in some kids' lives who were struggling, in part due to what had happened to Cody and his struggles with drugs. So and it did help having that background. So I taught there for 3 years, and then I moved to a place called iHigh, which I loved, and taught high schoolers and middle schoolers there, and again science. But that's when my diagnosis happened, and I applied for early retirement, just to protect my pension for my wife, because I was given a not so good prognosis, and essentially terminal illness, and you've got a few months to live. So that's kind of leading up to my diagnosis, where I was in life, and I fortunately I was blessed that I had a career, and I had saved up for retirement, but I also had that pension that I was close enough to age 55, which is the earliest that you can retire, in my district, and I was close enough that I qualified for that disability retirement, and was able to make that work. So that's where I was leading up to diagnosis.
Okay. And were you having symptoms? Was it just kind of a checkup, or honestly, I don't know that much about cholangiocarcinoma. So if you can maybe educate me and everybody else just a little bit.
Sure. So cholangiocarcinoma, as you said earlier, is bile duct cancer. So the thing about cholangiocarcinoma is it's a rare cancer. I think there's only 8,000 people who are diagnosed per annum, and and it's very difficult to diagnose in most cases. So what typically happens is it's diagnosed later than a lot of cancers, and that's why most people don't do well. The incidence, the survival is very, very low. I think the 5-year rate when I was diagnosed was 98 to 99% do not make it to year 5. 84% don't make it to year 3. And most of us are given just months, less than a year to live, most of us. But things are changing. There are a lot of novel treatments and clinical trial drugs and a lot of genomic testing with targeted therapies that have proven to be effective. So it's not the immediate death sentence that it was just a few years ago. And so I'm blessed. But I was lucky in that in in December of 22, I started feeling what felt like really bad indigestion. I felt like actually there was a tennis ball stuck in the middle of my chest, right at the middle of the sternum, the xiphoid process, and it was just very painful to sleep. And Christmas morning, we had family in town and staying at our house, and my son was here and from college, but at Christmas morning, I just could not sleep the night before. So I woke up and quietly, got dressed and went downstairs and wrote a note to my family. And I said, just, don't stress. But I drove myself to the ER because I'm in extreme pain and I'm there, but you guys just chill here and have a good Christmas morning. So that kind of put things on the radar. And I was very lucky that my GI was he was a real pusher to try to figure out what was wrong with me. Initially, we thought it was something called primary sclerosing cholangitis, that it might be that PSC, which is the stricture of the bile ducts and won't allow bile to get through. On January 13th, I was officially diagnosed with the cancer, the bile duct cancer. So I was lucky that I experienced the pain, went in, and then within a couple weeks was diagnosed. So I'm very, very lucky.
And then is there like a surgical treatment for that? Or is it mostly just, chemo, radiation? What is kind of the treatment for cholangiocarcinoma?
So my medical team, very quickly, I was assigned a number of specialty doctors. I mean, I had an oncologist, I had a GI guy. I got on my surgeon's list fairly quickly, and so I had a number of doctors. Even my primary care physician was an important part of this, but they were working in tandem, synchronously, and communicating with each other to try to figure out the best way to treat me. So I went on the liver transplant list immediately. I applied for the liver transplant to be on the UCSD list, and I within a couple weeks was turned down, just because I think typically cholangiocarcinoma has such a high recurrence rate, number one, but also at the time I had lost a kidney. I had what they thought was kidney cancer the year before, and they removed that right kidney, and it turned out to be benign, but still it had 3 large cystic tumors on it and had to go. So I think getting a liver transplant, I think the surgery itself is extremely hard on the kidneys, and they were worried about kidney failure for my remaining kidney. So that was quickly removed that January as an option for me. And then, so the next best hope for longer term survival is something called liver resection surgery, where they remove as much of the liver as they need to try to remove the cancer tissue and the tumor and the cells and typically the bile ducts and the gallbladder oftentimes. And but the thing about that surgery is only about 20% of us are able to qualify for the surgery because either it hasn't metastasized or the tumors are in a place where they can surgically, a resection and removing liver gives you favorable outcomes. It is. It's a difficult surgery, and in a number of cases, people who have the surgery, they remove. They sometimes they push the limit with removing as much of the liver as possible, just to give the person a better outcome. But in a good number of cases, the liver doesn't regenerate and grow back. It's the one organ in our body that you can cut in half, and it will
Yep.
typically grow back.
Yep.
So that is a benefit of having a liver sort of related problem. It's not liver cancer, but it's bile duct cancer. But that's liver resection is the best hope for longer term survival. In my case, that was. So I fortunately I met with my surgeon and was put on the surgery list to get surgery in April. But I have a type of cholangiocarcinoma that is extrahepatic, and it's the location of it was at the biliary tree, the junction of it, kind of a complicated area. But my strictures were so tight that no bile could flow down into the intestines, so they had to access the biliary tree from the top through my diaphragm and put in two stents and drains that were going out my body for almost 3 months. So I had these drains collecting bile and relieving pressure in my body for 3 months, and those were extremely painful and not easy to deal with. Unfortunately, most cholangiocarcinoma patients don't have to deal with that, but they get infected easily, no matter how diligent you are at keeping them clean. And so that was really probably the hardest part of my journey. Those things were miserably painful, and it was hard to breathe, and it's almost impossible to get comfortable and sleep because you can't really turn around. So I was really anxious to get the surgery done. And fortunately, my surgeon was able to move my surgery up to the 15th of March. However, I was in and out of the hospital due to, sepsis related to those biliary drains and whatnot. So, so they ended up keeping me in the hospital just leading up to surgery. And wouldn't let me leave and go home because they wanted me to go into surgery. But my surgeon said, a lot of times, he said, we don't typically trust imaging fully, even though I had a PET scan, CTs, and MRIs done in the area. He said, we never fully know until we open you up and look at it and find out if it really has metastasized or not, and if you are operable. And so I made it to surgery, thankfully. And it was classically inoperable when they opened me up because it had spread to the vascular tissue and wrapped all around the hepatic artery, and it was just not looking good. But I was with a team of doctors who were the dream team of surgeons. I was told by other doctors they were the dream team. And Dr. Gamagami, I guess, later told my family, we knew Brian, we knew he was a fighter. And this is advice that I think I would give every person that's remotely similar to my case. I was okay with dying, in that I knew that I needed to have the surgery done, or I was probably not going to live very much longer. And I was in bad shape. I had lost 60 pounds. I went from 180 to 120 very fast in about 3 to 4 months. So I told my surgeon before the surgery, I told him to push the limit. And I said, remove as much of that liver as you need to. And if it doesn't regenerate and grow back, which often happens, I said, it's okay. You did your best, and it's all right. I mean, I've got nothing to lose. So push the envelope. And they did. And they told my family, it was almost a 12-hour surgery with the two of them. And they later came back and told my family, we did not get all the cancer, but we did the surgery. And we've probably given Brian an extra few months of life. So I think that was good for me to have that discussion with my medical team. I don't know, maybe they would have still pushed forward and done the risky surgery.
Kind of sounds like they probably wouldn't have if you hadn't said that.
I don't know. I think the surgeon was pretty candid with my family afterwards, and it sounds like maybe he would not have, but I'll never know for sure. God bless him. He's the reason in large part that I'm here, he and the whole team. So I
So
had
be an
to.
advocate for yourself, be an advocate for your health, and, tell the doctors what you want and, what you're willing to do. That's great advice for anybody. Don't necessarily just go by the common protocol, but say, hey, I want to live as long as possible. So do whatever you can.
Exactly. So that was my attitude, and thankfully I was able to get the surgery, and thankfully my liver regenerated, even though they pushed the envelope and removed as much as they felt comfortable in removing. Because again, if they just remove a little bit too much, then it won't grow back and you pass away. So I then, because they didn't come close to getting all the cancer, I had to go through months of chemotherapy. I was on 2 different drugs, and then after that I had to go through 5 weeks of chemo paired with radiation in the area. And so it still was a battle, and but you know and
You're
but
still
here
here.
I am. Yep. It's been a journey. It's been amazing.
All right. Well, and we'd mentioned in your intro that you have taken kind of a different approach to your health and continued treatment. So can you talk a little bit about some of the complementary, I don't necessarily like to say alternative, but just complementary things that you are doing in addition to your regular treatment? I do want to say you have been no evidence of disease now for what, almost 2 years? Which,
Yep.
congratulations, that is phenomenal. And I know that you've said that you attribute a lot of that to some of the other things that you are doing for your health outside of just the traditional treatments.
Right. I will never know for sure what it was in my sequence of treatments that worked and was completely ineffective. I'll never know. You know, was it just the surgery and then followed by the chemo and the chemo radiation? Was it just Western medicine that got me to where I'm no evidence of disease? Or was it that coupled with some of the non-traditional methods that I did? And I'm pretty convinced that it was the synergism of both, just because of the number of cases that I've read and the people that I've known with cholangiocarcinoma, and I've done things that are. I mean, I know even my wife just is not real. She's in the healthcare profession, and she's got a doctorate degree, and she just shakes her head. But
But
I
you're
am
still
my own
here, so it
person.
doesn't
I'm
matter.
still here. So one of the things that I did early on, I have a good friend from my years of going on these great white shark expeditions to Guadalupe Island, Ralph Collier, who's one of the leading shark forensic scientists in the world. But Ralph is like a second dad to me. And early on, he mentioned MGN3, which is a compound from Southeast Asia, and it's from 3 different types of mushrooms, extracts from those, along with the type of brown rice bran, that they've got this compound. And fortunately, there was a study done, a medical study that I was able to give to my oncologist, and I asked her, "Do you have a problem with me taking this drug, this supplement?" Obviously, my insurance wasn't going to cover it, but she read the study and she said, "I don't see a problem with you taking this." So I started early on, before my surgery, on MGN3. And along the journey, I've done other things. I was in pretty significant pain even after my chemo radiation. But there's a guy in Boston. He teaches at Boston College. He works through Boston College, and he's a molecular biologist, and he focuses his work on cancer cells and cancer research, and the metabolic pathways of solid abdominal cancers is one of his areas of expertise. And he is an advocate of, one of the things he advocates is the carnivore diet to basically starve solid abdominal cancers. He's got a lot of people in his court that were stage 4 diagnosed and had nowhere else to go, and they tried this, and they're disease free right now. And so I thought,
Which is
I got
basically the opposite of what everybody else says to do for cancer.
including my medical team. They were not thrilled with that. I told them that I was asking for significant for forgiveness a month after I'd been on the carnivore, but they were not happy. They're like, no, Mediterranean or balanced diet. You don't have to go vegetarian or vegan, but you've got to a balanced diet really is what they all four of my major doctors told me after I told them I was trying carnivore. But the truth be known is I did Dr. Seyfried's protocol and went full on carnivore. And within days, my pain, my abdominal pain, which I had been in bad pain for about a year and a half, my pain went from most days being about a 7 or 8 out of 10 on the pain scale. Within a week, within days of starting carnivore, it went down to like a 2 to 4. So
Wow.
that actually gave me the motivation to keep on with this very odd diet. Very
I mean, that's
strange.
pretty significant.
It was very odd. And I stopped after all those medical appointments that I had about 4 to 6 weeks after I'd started carnivore. And fortunately, I went to more of a Mediterranean or more of a balanced diet, but unfortunately the pain did not come back. But every now and then when I was starting to not feel good, I would do a 1 to 2 week carnivore kind of reset, and it got me back to lower pain. So who knows? But that is what I experienced. And every now and then, when I would go to the carnivore reset for a couple of weeks, it would help me. It would get my pain reset. So it's very strange. I'm not sure why, but Dr. Thomas Seyfried from Boston College is the guy to go research and read his stuff. Go read his
And
studies.
maybe we're not supposed to know why. Yeah. And then you also got into yoga as well, correct?
Yes. So I went to cancer camp. It's like this one time at band camp. It's cancer
Yeah.
camp. Went to cancer camp. It's so weird to say that.
Well, that's Epic Experience, and I've talked about it, several
Yeah,
times. This great organization that does adventure camps for cancer survivors. Yeah.
absolutely. And that's I went to Epic Adventure and in Colorado, which is where most of my family lives. And I loved it. I was really fortunate that the week that I went, all the cancer survivors we're all, most of us are still, or most of the group is still ongoing treatment for it, but we're all alive and able to go to an adventure camp in Colorado and do rapids and whatnot. But our camp was like the only camp, I think, where we all had the same flavor of cancer. We are all cholangiocarcinoma patients, and so that allowed for a special kind of bonding that week with the other people, and we're still extremely close. We still text each other pretty much every day on our text strand, and it's been 6-7 months since cancer camp, and we have a Zoom meeting every month that we all come to and catch up in 2D. So it's pretty cool to do that as well. So that was a beautiful thing. But through the camp, one of the counselors, Starshine, Jana from San Diego, which is where I live now, and I've lived here for over 30 years. But Jana is the one person from camp that was a fellow San Diegan, and she was telling me just things worked out beautifully, and her initial flight was canceled out of Denver, so she rebooked and happened to be on the same flight with me coming back from Colorado to San Diego, and we sat next to each other on the flight, and we were talking, and she was mentioning Kundalini yoga, and I had done yoga at like 24-hour fitness years ago, and it was all right, but she talked about how it really is kind of it's a mind, body, and spirit kind of approach to yoga, and meditation is a big part of it as well, and saying mantras and these mudras and these hand movements and whatnot, and it seemed a little woo-woo to me, but I kind of dismissed it. But Jana, we had been back in San Diego a couple months, and she put together a Kundalini yoga and sound bath healing experience. at an Essene Retreat Center here in North County, San Diego, at the Essene Retreat Center. And so I said, why not? I'll come. I'll come. And one time, the two people that led it, a girl named Monica and a guy named Jamie, the two leaders, I was hooked. And Monica runs at the Essene Retreat Center every Thursday morning. She runs a Kundalini yoga practice, and I go every Thursday. And I actually have since started doing yoga for probably the last 3 months every day. When it's not in a community, I do it at home, and I'm hooked. I really am. And my pain, how it was, a 2 to 4 for the last year and a half plus. It is now. I remember the moment. It was about 2 months ago, and I was in a practice with Monica, and it was the first time that I experienced no pain for over 3 years in my abdomen. And I was like stunned, and it was during a yoga moment. And at the moment I'm pain free. So I attribute that really to the Kundalini yoga. I really do. And I'm in a great place. In fact, today I got back my blood panel results. Every 6 weeks I go in for blood work and a port flush. I still have my chemo port just because that's the nature of my cancer. They never really say you're in remission. They just say you're no evidence of disease at the moment because the recurrence metastasis rate is so high. But I just celebrated my third cancerversary, my 3 years it's been since my diagnosis, and my blood panel results today were the best and healthiest I've had in 3 years plus.
Yay! Congratulations.
Pinch me. I mean, I feel a little survivor's guilt. I feel a little guilty about it, but I'm just kind of in shock and I'm stunned, but how lucky am I? But I really think yoga was a big part of that. It's been kind of a bunch of things working all together, but yoga as of late for sure. I'm truly blessed. Came into my life.
Well, and you said earlier that, you may never know, what combination or what is actually doing this. And, listening to you talk, I think that if doing the carnivore diet brings your pain from a 7 to a 2 to 4, and if doing yoga takes you from a 2 to 4 to 0, like, who cares?
Exactly.
If it's giving you a better quality of life because the pain is not there. And, who cares if it's actually doing anything for your cancer? Like, you're able to live pain-free. And that's like almost the most important thing, at least to me, on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, obviously it's doing more because your blood work is great too, but kind of who cares? You're not in pain.
Well, right. I mean, you're right. I mean, it really doesn't matter, knowing, what has been working, what hasn't. But I think the proof is in the pudding. So I'm pretty convinced it's been a synergism of several different things working together to put me where I am today. Another real important part of all this, I think, is the spiritual journey that I've been on. So I feel like it's a knowing. I'm fully convinced that there is something beyond us when we physically die. That's me personally, and I think that's helped with my healing, as well as I think intercessional prayers from people that I don't even know, people that I know and don't know. I know that there were prayer groups that were set up for me, and people making prayer blankets for me, and these are strangers showing that kind of unconditional love. So that was very powerful for me too, and I think a part of the healing. So who knows? But I'm a believer. I'm here.
Wow. That is wonderful. And, everything that you say is stuff that we talk about in here, and, just spirituality and faith and belief and that positivity and gratitude. And, it's all just, I'm kind of like, who cares if you believe it or not? Like, it works. And so many people, it has worked for. And you seem, and when we had our conversation last week, you just seem to be just very serene and very accepting of whatever comes your way. And you're a fighter and you're absolutely fighting, but you're also just like whatever happens is going to happen, and I'm going to be okay with it. And I don't know, it's just very comforting, I guess, to talk to you and to be in your presence. And I absolutely love that. And I think that goes a long way too, and just being, less stress in your life.
Well, thank you for saying that. I feel the same way about you. I mean, you're beautifully grounded and I think connected in beautiful ways with the. I think I feel a sereneness around you. So I'm grateful for you in this interview. This is the first time I've really shared publicly. I mean, a lot of my friends from years ago don't even know that I've been fighting cancer the last 3 years. So to be able to have this platform and to just kind of share my experiences with it all is, I think it's a positive, and hopefully it resonates with somebody out there. Um, yeah, I feel blessed.
Yeah. And I firmly believe that every time we share our story, we become an advocate for other people to feel more comfortable sharing or getting tested, like taking charge of your health and not sticking your head in the sand and not paying attention to things. And so for some people, they're just not ready to share. And I have no judgment for that, but I feel like the more that we share, the more we destigmatize it, and the more we are out there to help other people be able to deal with all of this as well.
Absolutely. You've just reminded me of some things that are really important about my journey that I haven't talked about. One of them is the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. Even though it's a very rare cancer, I feel really lucky. Like I've got this army of people through the foundation that have put together these amazing resources for people with cholangio, and they are powerful. And I have gotten so much from the organization and attending their annual conference in the mid-spring that they hold in Salt Lake City. I attended remotely the first year because I was not in very good shape, even though I'd already gone through the treatments. I just couldn't do it. But then I went with my wife to Utah this past April, and it was amazing. And I was able to meet others who, I guess my wife and I call it, people who have sort of a survivor's mentality, and they're all pretty peaceful about it. They're all pretty chill people, but that they were like minded, and it was nice to be around people like that. But the foundation is very powerful, and they've got some amazing doctors and researchers from the pharma industry in their corner, and it's 500, 600 plus people there at this conference and remotely. And a number of the researchers that I became close with, a common theme was them telling me that this was their favorite conference to go to of all the conferences, because this is the one where they get to interact with some patients and really see the results of their hard work. And it's inspiring for them. So I mean, I even text some of those doctors and some of those pharma people today, even though they're across the country and, in Jersey and Chicago. So that has been a real blessing. The foundation, through the foundation, I've also been able to become a mentor to others. And you're absolutely right. I think it's one of the things we're supposed to learn here in Earth School is to not judge, not just people, but the things that happen to us in life. And that's a very hard thing for most of us to do.
Yep.
And so I feel like, I do the best that I can to be non-judgmental of others or the things that happen to me. And definitely everybody has a different reaction to their diagnosis. And as a mentor, I see that in the people that I've been matched with. And some people, they really don't want to talk about it. And kind of like, I mean, I've met people that remind me of my dog. that my dog my dog Dobby, who recently passed away at age 18, but she would, when she did something wrong, she would put her head underneath a blanket and kind of, it's like, you can't see me, so I'm not here. I can't.
Oh.
And so I feel like there are some people I've encountered that are kind of like that if they don't think about it, that it'll just disappear magically, and it's okay. It's okay. And and I just tell them that I'm here to talk and support them in any way that they want or need. Just reach out whenever you feel like it. So I've definitely had some people like that I've encountered, and then I've I've had mentors that were pretty spiritually grounded too, and had a strong belief in a creator and an afterlife. And so it's just, we're human, and we come in all kinds, and it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. Another thing that's very important that the foundation also pushes forward is a message of, when you are diagnosed for many cancers, not just cholangiocarcinoma, it is pretty important to get genomic testing and get blood testing done to try to find some genomic markers that they might be able to have a targeted therapy, a targeted drug for you that matches that genetic mutation in your body. So it's very easy to go get a genetics test. And I've actually gone through 4 sets of genomic testing, and they never found a genetic mutation for me. So that was never an option for me, going through the immunotherapy or targeted drug therapies, but that is very important early on in a person's cancer diagnosis for most types of cancer. And the tests are changed, very frequently. So even if you were tested for genetic markers, 3 years ago, tests
They keep
change.
finding new ones.
There's always a novel drug out there. Exactly. So
Right.
it's a very dynamic field. So those are a couple things I wanted to really talk about the foundation, and I could talk for hours about the beautiful people that I've worked with and gotten to know, and the synchronicities that have happened that just are mind blowing. Really, they're just miracle stories. But yeah,
One of the true blessings of cancer is just the people that come into your life, and that
yes.
you probably would have never known if it hadn't been for this disease. So that's another, for me, something to be grateful for. Absolutely.
Amen. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Brian. This has been just such a wonderful conversation, and I'm so happy for you being NED, and and thriving in life, and helping others. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story today.
Well, it's my pleasure. And like I said earlier, I am an open book, and I'd love to. If there's anybody out there that this resonated with, or you had additional questions, feel free to reach out to me and contact me. Is that okay for me to say right now, or do
Of
you?
course, absolutely. Is email the best way to get in touch with you? We can put your email in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah, we
Okay.
could do that. Do you want me to just say it right now as well,
Sure,
or just
absolutely.
okay? Yeah. So, yeah, just feel free to email me at B as in Brian Finley, Finley, B Finley, Finley at I'm sorry, B Finley 1969 at gmail.com. bfinley1969 at gmail.com. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you all, and hopefully this resonated with somebody out there, and hopefully I could be of help. I'd love to hear your story and talk. So thank you.
All right. You're very welcome. And thanks again for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
All
You're
right.
great.
Take care.
You too. Thank you so much.